Here is one of the very many buildings undergoing currently renovations on the street that's called in this area a Millionaire's Row. And this particular building is over 50 years old. A single square foot here costs between $400 and $700, give or take. And here we can see a patchwork of small rectangular repairs. Here we're gonna focus on a single one which shows an exposed rusting rebar, which is being in preparation for cleaning. And you can also see some spray paint marks indicating vertical cracks along that parapet wall. You can see also the origin of a crack within the exposed top edge of the parapet wall, which is probably how water seeped inside and allowed this rebar to rust, causing the spalling of the concrete. So there is nothing unusual here. This is like a textbook repair. Here we can see unusual roof with a gravel ballast, plenty of rigs with hanging scaffolds and some terraces with round corners, with round parapet walls. And here is the separation crack between the parapet and the roof slab. Some of it is grouted solid, some of it is still exposed, so we can clearly see there is no movement joint formed in this repair. There is no control joint. This repair is pretty much pointless because it doesn't address the future movement. We can also see some of those cracks, particularly those step-like cracks that separate the parapet wall. They are not even marked with this spray paint. It's quite possible that they formed only after the repairs were started, just illustrating further how pointless they are without allowing the parapet walls to move. We can see the patchwork of those rectangular repairs along the tops of the parapet walls. Those are the structural repairs for the rusted rebars. There is even a formwork here, pretty much like the one that we showed at the very beginning. There are multiple cracks that allow water to seep inside, chloride anions. This is a coastal property. Here is the parapet wall, which shows a textbook example of cracks. This is a parapet wall that's exposed on both sides to the exterior swing of temperatures. It expands, it shrinks. We can see very pronounced horizontal crack with some water, some dirt seeping through, and the pattern of masonry propagating through the stucco, because obviously there is not a single joint along this parapet wall that would allow it to dissipate that stress. And we can see multiple similar repairs. This is all just putting grout into those areas that were spalling, that were cleaned up in this roughly rectangular shape, and they will be cracking like there is no tomorrow. There is not a single movement joint or control joint that's provided to counter this situation and address it appropriately, because water will be just seeping inside those concrete areas just as it did before. There should be movement joints developed along the bases of the wall, at the tops of the wall, and separating parapet walls into horizontal stretches, typically no longer than 20 feet long, with the appropriate solution to prevent water infiltration, so water doesn't enter and cause any further reinforcement corrosion. Here is an interesting wall because we can see former patches in the textured area. There are control movement joints developed at the heads of the walls, and we can see when we get closer that there are no cracks propagating across those patches. Obviously the texture doesn't really help in determining where those cracks are located. But this typically tells us that there is too much bridging between the structural slab and the masonry infill. Either that or the entire wall is just cast concrete, pretty much like in many cases in case of shafts for staircases or elevators. And if there is a masonry infill, there would be a random pattern of cracks developed by overstressing them, which we wouldn't see because of the texture. Here we also see the louvers that are deteriorated at the top, which is pretty common in this region. We can see some marks at the bottoms of the terrace slabs and at the parapet walls, marking them for repairs. We can see the nice stainless steel coping installed at the top of that parapet wall or curb wall along the shaft, with some water standing. Here water is typically a bad sign, but it provides some thermal inertia. Here we have 3 or 4 cases where the lifelines and cables are not protected appropriately when they go over an edge. Now this sends shivers through my spine because I used to hang on industrial ropes like that, and later when they are unreeled for next use, it's pretty difficult to find damage, and it's simply irresponsible. That's somebody's life hanging on it. Here we have a unique view of the top of the terrace slab undergoing some structural repairs with rebars exposed as well. Well, thank you for taking the sky tour with me. I am an architect with over a quarter of century of experience in a very narrow field of building enclosures and also a pilot. Please let me know if you enjoyed this tour. It would motivate me to post more.